that want to get this thing done and want to play games. So for you to say everybody's on the same page was a complete lie. Now, here's Adam Silver. NBA Commissioner Adam Silver said Tuesday night he is tracking WNBA collective bargaining sessions very closely, and that he and Deputy Commissioner Mark Tatum would both be willing to join the prolonged negotiations to finalize a deal. That means
Adam Silver just stepped into the WNBA's contract fight like he's flipping on a spotlight, and he isn't pretending to be neutral for even a second. The commissioner made his stance loud and clear. He wants players to chill, compromise, and get back to hooping. That energy sounds real familiar because that's exactly what Cameron Clark said 2 weeks ago when she went against the Players Association. And now the most powerful figure in pro basketball is echoing her message like it's a warning siren. And here's where things get wild. Silver didn't stroll in saying he'd help out or smooth things over. Nope, he laid it out plain. Both sides need to find a meeting of the minds, and compromise is the only way forward. Then he doubled down by saying, WNBA players deserve a bigger bag thanks to the league's momentum. But he carefully sidestepped the thing the union wants most, the 50-50 revenue split. Silver's talking about raising checks, not flipping the entire money structure, which basically rejects the union's main demand without him ever saying the word no. Timing? Oh, it matters big time. Silver dropped all this on December 17th at the NBA Cup Finals in Vegas, right when everyone's paying attention. Meanwhile, the current deal expires January 9th, which means only 3 weeks to patch up a gap that folks inside the room are calling massive. The players want 30% of the league's revenue. The league is offering 15%.
With many of the players and believes the sides are on course for a solution. The current 40-day extension ends January 9th, and that date is fastly approaching. Okay, he says, I remain optimistic we'll get something done, but whether that means I'm physically sitting at the table for the negotiation, Silver said. And again, I speak for Mark as well. We have been involved with this league for 3 decades. In essence, I care enormously about it and want it to be successful, and I want the players to feel fairly treated as well. And I realize there's been a disconnect,
and Silver is out here casually telling both sides to meet in the middle, while also rejecting the entire formula the players are using to argue for their slice. Pay close attention to Breanna Stewart's reaction, because she didn't hide her frustration. She said what they're doing now isn't getting them anywhere. And that's a heavy translation. She's basically saying the Players Association's hardball strategy backfired. They walked away from the old CBA in October, thinking the league would fold quick and hand over revenue sharing, and now the whole thing looks shaky with the clock ticking loud. Instead of gaining leverage, the players have blown through 2 extensions, watched the league roll out expansion plans without even looping them in, and now they're staring at the possibility of Adam Silver himself pulling up to the negotiation table. Stewart says she'd love for Silver to join the talks, but listen to how she phrases it. She wants to make sure everybody understands what the players want and how they feel. That's not confidence talking. That's someone hoping the commissioner puts some heat on the owners. Even though Silver already revealed his stance loud and clear, he's not pushing for a 50-50 split. He's pushing for a deal that gets games back on the schedule, period. And here's where it gets messy for the players real fast. Stewart tries to smooth things over by saying both sides can win and everybody can get what they want, but then she adds that something mutual needs to happen first. That's a quiet way of admitting the union has to give something up. Think about that for a second. This same Players Association spent 2 straight months calling revenue, sharing a non-negotiable line in the sand. They even went on Instagram poking fun at Silver's October comments about absolute dollars versus percentages, making it seem like they were ready for a real showdown. They framed the whole battle as a fight for fairness, for equity, for respect. But now their top voice is saying compromise isn't just possible, it's necessary. That's a huge walkback from the bold energy they were projecting online. And it puts pressure on players like Breanna Stewart and Napheesa Collier, who are running unrivaled, because the longer these talks drag out, the more fans can see that not everyone is fighting the same fight or protecting the same interests. And this is the moment where the real crack shows itself. Stewart gets hit with a question about Project B, the new 3-on-3 league running from fall through April. That timeline slices right into Unrivaled's winter plans, and the way Stewart reacts says way more than her words ever could. She says Project B saw what Unrivaled pulled off and wanted to jump in their own way, but then she quickly pivots, hyping up Unrivaled for its equity stakes, resources, and the comfort of keeping everyone in one city. But notice what she avoids saying. She never mentions that Project B's schedule actually fits way better with the WNBA calendar. She skips right past the fact that players who want to hoop overseas and still return fresh for a full WNBA season.
Silver said ahead of NBA Cup final in Las Vegas, I talk to the people who are at the negotiating table on a daily basis, and I've said before, we, the NBA, WNBA collective acknowledged that our players deserve to be paid significantly more than they have so far based on the increased success of the league, and it's just a question now of finding a meeting of the minds in terms of what is a
finally have a clean path to do it. Instead, she brushes Project B off as imitation and circles right back to unrivaled selling points. That's not a breakdown, that's straight promotional talk dressed up as analysis, and that's exactly where the real conflict pops out. Listen to this part again. Stewart says if the WNBA season isn't cohesive with everything else, then nothing can run together, and there has to be a world where everybody agrees. But then she openly admits they're not anywhere close to that world, and her own focus is locked on unrivaled right now. That's the whole issue in one breath. The Players Association is supposed to negotiate for every athlete in the league, but the two biggest voices at the table are running a side league that benefits from shorter WNBA schedules and needs the winter months protected for their own business. That's a major conflict sitting right in the middle of the bargaining table. Caitlin Clark pointed this out 3 weeks ago with a clean message. Players need to compromise because games need to be played. And the vibe behind that statement was impossible to miss. She was saying out loud what a lot of players were whispering, that some folks are putting their off-season ventures above the league that actually signs their checks. Commissioner Kathy Engelbert said everyone was on the same page, but that clearly wasn't true. Players like Deja Kelly and others came out backing Clark's stance, and now Adam Silver is stepping in because the talks have frozen up for exactly this reason. And here's the move that tells you things just got real. Silver said he and Deputy Commissioner Mark Tatum are both ready to walk into the negotiations. When Tatum steps in, it's no cameo. That means the NBA is treating this as a full-blown business emergency, not some little disagreement they can ignore. Mark Tatum is the guy who handles league operations and global strategy, and he does not pop up for basic labor talks. He shows up when a deal is wobbling and the league has to protect its investment fast. The WNBA is in the middle of a huge expansion wave, Golden State next season, then Toronto and Portland in 2026, and they just locked in new media deals worth $2.2 billion over 11 years starting in 2025. They cannot risk a shutdown or a messy public fight with their own players during a moment that's shaping the league's whole future. But at the same time, they can't start a trend where, as the saying goes, the inmates run the asylum. A 50-50 revenue split would basically hand over control to a league that still operates in the red. And the NBA isn't letting that happen, not while they're pouring in long-term investment and building new markets. So Silver isn't showing up to talk it out. He's showing up to lay down a solution both sides can swallow so the season doesn't fall apart. He's coming to impose a compromise, not brainstorm one. That deal will almost definitely include major salary boosts, real travel upgrades, stronger benefits, and maybe even a revenue sharing plan tied to profit goals instead of total revenue. That's progress, but it's not the blank check 30% demand the union put on the table. And here's why that matters most in Caitlin Clark's case. She stepped away from the union's stance because she saw the reality that nobody wanted to say out loud.
And now let's get to the actual video so we can get more dialogue of what Breanna Stewart had to say. They trying to hardball. The owners aren't going to give in to all this nonsense. They're trying to hardball. These players are. And at the end of the day, Adam Silver is with Caitlin Clark. Y'all need to compromise and get this damn deal done and stop playing games.
Hey, Stewie. Good to see you. I had two questions. The first, Adam Silver spoke ahead of the cup and said that if necessary, he'd be up for coming to the bargaining table, him and Mark Tatum. I'm just wondering, do you think that would be beneficial? Would there be value to having Adam's presence?
The WNBA's growth is real, but it's still fragile. One bad headline, one stoppage, one ugly fight, and that momentum can crack quick. The league needs games played, screens lit up, fans locked in, maximum minutes and maximum exposure. Clark understands that because she's the reason those numbers exploded in the first place. Her games averaged 1.2 million viewers this season, while the rest of the league averaged around 400,000. She's not being selfish by pushing for compromise. She's trying to protect a moment she helped build, a moment the league can't afford to waste. She's simply being real about where the actual leverage sits, and Silver sees the exact same thing. That's why he made sure to bring up increased success and absolute dollar increases instead of touching percentages. He's admitting players deserve a bigger bag because the league is finally rising, but he's also reminding everybody that growth gets measured in cash, not in fancy formulas. The WNBA pulled in around $200 million this season. 30% of that is $60 million spread across 144 players. That comes out to about $417,000 each on average, except that's before you pay for team operations, travel, staffing, facilities, expansion fees, and every other bill on the table. At 30%, the math collapses. At 15%, it's already tight with how the league is structured right now. And Silver knows this because the NBA lived through the same growing pains. The NBA didn't jump to a 50-50 split until it was a global machine with huge profits and decades of financial safety. The WNBA is only in year 28, and just now hitting a real turning point. Asking for NBA-level revenue splits today is like asking for a penthouse key when you just got your first apartment. It sounds bold, but it's not rooted in the reality of the business right now. But the Players Association boxed themselves in by turning this into a story about fairness and equity instead of cold numbers and economics. They framed the entire fight as a gender moment instead of a financial one. And now they can't walk it back without looking like they folded under pressure.
Run from fall to April, which is in direct competition with Unrivaled. What were your immediate thoughts when you heard about Project B? And what's the long-term answer for the landscape of women's basketball? Is it to have one premier league? Is it to continue developing all of these leagues? Like, what is truly the answer? What is the ideal world for the women's basketball landscape?
Yeah, I mean, I think my immediate thoughts when I saw Project B, I was kind of like, well, they saw what worked. You know, they saw the success that we had here at Unrivaled, and they, you know, they wanted to be a part of that in their own way and try to do it. But at the same time, knowing, you know,
that's the trap. They made the argument emotional, not structural. That's also why Kathy Engelbert insisted all players were united. She had to keep the picture clean, because the second that illusion cracks, the whole strategy falls apart. And that crack already happened. Caitlin Clark cracked it wide open. Then more players who actually want to hoop, get paid, and keep the season alive cracked it even further. Silver didn't create this pressure. He just stepped into a mess that was already leaking from the inside. If you want the next piece rewritten, send it over. And now Adam Silver is about to break that illusion completely by forcing everyone in the room to face what's real. The truth is simple. WNBA players absolutely deserve higher pay, but the league can't cut checks based on revenue percentages that ignore whether the business is actually turning a profit. Both things can be true at the same time. And real compromise means accepting both truths without pretending one cancels out the other. Over the next 3 weeks, pay attention because the whole situation is about to tighten up. The Players Association will either take a deal that gives them major raises but leaves revenue sharing off the table, or they'll sit back and watch Silver and Mark Tatum step into that room and lay down a structure nobody loves, but everyone can survive. That's what real compromise looks like. Nobody walks out celebrating, but everybody gets enough to keep the league moving forward. And look at what Breanna Stewart said. Her focus right now is unrivaled. That alone explains why these talks keep hitting a wall. Some of the players leading negotiations are locked in on protecting their off-season business instead of maximizing the league that actually signs their contracts. That split in priorities is the real weight hanging over the room. Meanwhile, players who truly want to push WNBA growth, like Caitlin Clark, are the ones calling for compromise. And the league's own commissioner is lining up behind Clark's mindset while getting ready to force a deal that drags everyone back to reality. This isn't about who's right or wrong. It's about who understands the moment they're living in.
If that means that Adam and Mark need to come to the table, we're more than happy to have that, and just making sure everybody understands what we want and how we feel, and realizing that both things can be true together. You know, everybody can agree and like get what they want out of this, but there has to be some, like, I don't know, mutual, some things in common happening first. So staying in one city, yeah, we'll have like a tour stop in Philly this year, but making sure that we're prioritizing players and their bodies and their health. And as for a long-term solution, I don't know the answer. Because it's like, now you have all these options. You have Unrivaled, you have WNBA potentially happening in its normal season.
The WNBA finally has momentum, real momentum, something it's been chasing for almost 3 decades. And that momentum is being carried on the shoulders of one player bringing in casual fans who never tuned in before. Those new fans don't care about revenue formulas or CBA clauses. They just want to watch Caitlin Clark hoop, smile, compete, and change the energy of every arena she steps into. And if these negotiations end up delaying the season, shortening it, or messing with that viewing experience in any way, those casual fans will fade out just as quickly as they showed up. That's the real leverage here, and that's exactly why Silver is stepping in with urgency. He's backing Clark's stance because the worst thing that could happen to the WNBA right now is a messy labor fight that reminds casual fans why they weren't paying attention before Clark arrived. The league cannot afford that kind of backslide, and honestly, neither can the players, even if some haven't fully caught on yet. So here's the question hanging over everything. Will the Players Association take the compromise before Silver forces one? Or will they push this standoff too far and end up looking like they cared more about their offseason league than the main product? Because that's the narrative forming right now. And once that story gets legs, the actual CBA terms won't even matter. The damage will already be baked in. January 9th is 3 weeks away and the clock is moving fast. Silver made it clear he's not letting this beef spill into the season. One way or another, a deal will be made. The only thing left to find out is whether the players walk into that agreement willingly or get pulled into it when the NBA steps in fully. And based on Breanna Stewart's recent comments, it's pretty clear the union is starting to realize the leverage they thought they had isn't the leverage they actually hold. Now we'll see if they're sharp enough to take the win that's sitting on the table instead of gambling for the win they imagined. So what happens when Silver and Mark Tatum sit down at that table? Do you think the union backs off right away, or do they try one last swing at revenue sharing even though the math isn't on their side? And when the new deal drops, how does Caitlin Clark play it? Does she stay quiet, or does she let the world know she was right the whole time? Drop your predictions in the comments. And if you honestly think the Players Association played this right, break it down, because from my angle, they're about to learn a pricey lesson about the difference between real leverage and wishful thinking. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share. And I'll see you on the next one.